Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with part 10 on my series, Sedevacantism, the Catholic Perspective. As I've indicated in the previous segment, the traditional Catholic Mass, the Tridentine liturgy in the West, and if anyone in the alternate rites retains the historic forms of those rites as they existed prior to Vatican II, for they too have been getting destroyed more and more, and so forth. Those who adhere to the ancient rites, in doing so, demonstrate, commemorate, sign up to officially, publicly, and visibly, as it were, to being Catholics and to having continued to be Catholics. Doesn't mean everyone individually is. Some may not be. As I said, the Orthodox, the old Roman Catholics, and even individual parishioners who just like the old liturgy but have no intention of living a Catholic life, you see, wouldn't be Catholics. But by going to the liturgy, it's like they're saying they're bad Catholics, is what it really amounts to, if that's what they're doing. And likewise, conversely, I realize that some who've been suckered into the Novus Ordo, as those who were suckered into the Church of England or the Protestant sects, could have invincible ignorance, might be inculpable in their failure to become Catholics. God will have to judge the individual case, but I'm certain that there are some folks out there who are, though outside the visible union of the Church, nevertheless Catholic at heart. And as I said, God will reveal who those are in the great judgment at the end of time. But now you might be wondering, here I am, a Sedevacantist, saying that those who are going to, let us say, a Motu Mass could still be Catholics. Well, isn't that going, in union with the great Antichrist still? Well, you know what? Antichrist, these guys may or may not be. They probably are, in my own very, very human opinion, but I don't know. I can only have my own opinion. And maybe it's time to talk a little bit about that. As I've indicated, you couldn't judge a pope. No one can judge a pope. But now that I have demonstrated what the Vatican leader is, that his rank, ecclesiastically speaking, and apart from any heresies that may further depose him, okay, just the bare fact of Lumen Gentium itself states that he is comparable to like a patriarch or archbishop of some particular rite or some particular archdiocese or what have you, such that you could be Catholic in there and you could be Catholic outside that particular rite or diocese or archdiocese. And that's okay by virtue of that. It means something else now. Since he is not Pope, he could be judged, ideally by a superior or alternatively, possibly even by his peers. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of whether that's really possible or what circumstances, exceptional enough, it might become possible, or if it's going to require that the church acquire a real pope to make that judgment. That's a bigger question, and I'm not going to get into at this time. But it really does have to be done and can be done. Since he is no longer a pope, he can be judged. He can now be put on trial. He can be called before, let us say, if the real bishops of the church today were to summon him to like a court or tribunal made up of themselves or those whom they appoint and trust, they can lawfully put the man on trial. And if he does not recant the Vatican II heresies, they can convict him formally, publicly, lawfully, juridically of heresy. Once that is done now, he is officially deposed, and now no Catholic would, and as of that moment, no Catholic would continue in his rite or archdiocese or whatever organization, whatever you want to call it. That would be the call for all Catholics. Are you Catholic at heart? That's the signal. You have to get out. Right now, it's enough, but that hasn't happened yet. And this is the key thing. Right now, the only judgments we have is just our own individual. Well, I think we all know. Okay, Christ did not establish a juridical judging body to judge popes. The whole church just isn't set up that way. It could never be. But hypothetically, if per possible, there could be such a body, and this body were to take a look at Paul VI and John Paul II and now Benedict XVI, and put these men on trial, short of them totally repenting, I think we all know what conclusion such a body would have to reach. And the whole problem has just been the bare fact that, well, as I've indicated before, there isn't such a body and cannot be such a body, at least not to judge a pope. But there could be such a body to judge a lesser prelate of the church, which my Lumen Gentium theory has just demonstrated to be the case regarding the Vatican leader. Once he is so tried, judged, deposed by the church, then, you say, you can say you cannot have anything, you cannot, acknowledge, you cannot accept his authority at all in any sense of the word. And even in whatever things you might say that are good, you cannot accept his authority anymore. But until that has happened, individual Catholics, you see, especially give or take how informed they are, what circumstances they have for being able to obtain the Mass, the sacraments, because you really should get them. I mean, unless you really can, unless there's either nothing at all, or maybe there is a Catholic Mass, but it's said by some young pup that was never really ordained. Okay, you don't have to go there either. But if you got a real Mass by a real priest, and if that priest isn't using that Mass as a way to undermine and destroy, the faith of those in his congregation, and if you can get to it within a reasonable, moderate amount of travel time, you're bound to go. You're morally, ethically, as a Catholic, bound to go. And it will feed your soul. So that is what's important, is that you do go. And until, like I said, I've demonstrated that the Vatican leadership can be judged, but until it has happened, you cannot act as if he has been juridically judged. You cannot bind the consciences of others and say that they are forced to be away from under the authority of the Vatican leader. And that is why you can say there are Catholics in that organization. They no longer define the purpose of it, but they live in little corners, sort of in a kind of dhimmitude, to use an Islamic term, which is what the Muslims talk about when they have congregation, little towns where Christians are allowed to live as Christians, as long as they keep to themselves, don't bother anybody else. In some areas they'd be allowed to continue as Christians. You have that in Islamic nations. Doesn't mean the Islamic nation is a Christian nation. It just means they've tolerated some Christians in dhimmitude in some few cities that are allocated to that purpose. And the Vatican organization is the same. It holds what few real Catholics it has left, and real visible Catholics, mind you, who attend the real Mass, in a kind of dhimmitude of little isolated places where they are tolerated as long as they don't bother anybody else. And that's why I would never say that those who go to a motu Mass of, let's say, some retired priest that they put as a motu priest, would not be Catholic. Of course they're Catholics. But obviously, the Sedevacantism finding is true. A real analysis of these things, should they have the time and the resources to do it, would show them that if they have a choice, they really should opt for, a more solidly traditional group. But so long as they still find the faith, they are still Catholics. Thank you.